There's one major aspect of many different manga and anime that, for better or for worse, garners more discussion than the story itself sometimes: power scaling.
He not being Goku!
And alongside that, something that's just as important is the power system at the root of all that scaling. Different series will take different approaches to how strong their characters are and where their powers actually come from. Some series will take inspiration from the real world, using spiritual ideas like Dragon Ball's Ki. Although that gets pretty crazy obviously because there's no martial artist out there turning their hair blue or whatever. Then there's a bunch of series that have unique power depending on the user. Think of Jujutsu Kaisen's curses, Chainsaw Man's devils, My Hero Academia's quirks, or even just the powers that people have in One Punch Man. But power systems can often be used for more than just displaying how strong someone is. And usually they are actually used this way, but that doesn't automatically mean every series is using a power system well. And even if they are using it well, how well thought out is it in the first place? What other stuff in the series does it extend to? Does it feel like it actually belongs in the world? And that's exactly why I chose this specific power system to talk about today. One that constantly takes precedence in the story, one that is continuously built upon, and not just in ways that make the character stronger, but built upon in the sense that it feels like it's crucial to the series. And when this system is built upon, the series itself is built upon. Of course, this isn't the only system treated like that, but I feel like it's one of the most notable and one of the best examples of how to do power systems right. In case you couldn't tell by the title, I'm referring to Hunter x Hunter's Nen system. So this video is not going to be going into specifics about how the system works and explaining it. Rather, this is just an overview of why it works as well as it does, and what I think other series can learn from it. Consider this me focusing on the context and narrative use of the power system rather than focusing on the actual mechanics of it, and trying to explain to you how it works. I will briefly cover it though because I do feel that's important, because it shows that there's a robust system in place. I have a few different sections in this video. First is a brief overview of the mechanics. Second is how it affects characterization. The third section is focused on how it affects world building. And the fourth section is about how other series can learn from it. So with that said, section 1. One of my favorite aspects about Nen is that there's not just one type of it. There's multiple different types of Nen users, and there's different aspects that go beyond that as well. Different mechanics that go into the system itself. So as you all probably know, there's different types of Nen users. Enhancers, transmuters, conjurers, specialists, manipulators, and emitters. It's a nice little variety, basically giving us different categories of Nen and how it can be used. This is a great way to make it so the power doesn't stagnate. It opens up new possibilities of how Nen can be used. Since ideas can be taken from any types of these categories, and there can be a creative aspect applied to make it more interesting. It's not just going to be this person is physically stronger than the next person, no. Of course that does play a role in it, but let's say there's someone physically strong as an enhancer. Maybe there's someone who's a stronger conjurer that can completely overcome that power. It's not just raw physical strength that comes into play here, there's other aspects. And that also brings to mind the different principles of Nen. There's the 4 principles that were explored: Ten, Zetsu, Ren, and Hatsu, and then all the other techniques that go alongside those, mainly applying to people individually. Now I can make a whole video explaining all this stuff, but like I said, that's not what I'm here for. The point of me bringing this up is the fact that it makes the system feel so robust. And whenever we see someone training with Nen, it feels like we're part of it. We're learning the actual different aspects of it. We're not just told, oh, they did some training and now they know how to use it. No, we actually see the different aspects of Nen that they learn, and how different Nen users can make it apply to themselves. Speaking of that, the next section is about how characterization affects Nen, and also the inverse in a way. As I kind of said before, this isn't exclusive to Hunter x Hunter. There are a lot of series that have powers that are based on the actual users themselves, like My Hero Academia for example. Some quirks reflect the actual personalities of the people having those quirks. But I think Nen really excels at doing this. Besides the fact that Nen varies by person, Nen feels naturally intertwined with who the person is. Someone's Nen ability goes in line with their personality, but it's not too on the nose. It's good enough where it feels fitting and natural, but it's not too extremely over the top like, let's use My Hero Academia again, Bakugo. Someone whose quirk is so obviously very intertwined with his personality. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying I like how Nen does it. The ability fits the user, and it doesn't feel like the character was created to suit the power. Rather, the power was suited to fit the character, which is a good way to do it. The character comes first, and the power should be built around them rather than the other way around. And on the topic of individuality, Nen is something that's not really exclusive, but it's not easily obtainable by everyone either. It's still a pretty mysterious power system in the grand scheme of things, at least for the average person. It's ever expanding. It's not just a power limited to a certain group of people, but it's also exclusive enough where it's not just going to be everyone having it, where it feels special. It's a nice balance. Exclusivity, mystery, but still obtainable. And that ties into the third section where I talk about world building. Nen is very creative in its uses, and it's not just going to stagnate, as I kind of touched upon before. Power isn't limited to just the user. It actually affects the world around it. It feels like it's actually a part of the world. With it not just being something exclusive to characters, it feels like it's a part of the story. Nen is so deeply ingrained into the story that the actual world itself is affected. The best and most obvious example is how the Chimera ants were made. Nen played a role in nature and affected actual species besides humans. Nen plays an obvious role in other ways too, like think of the Hunter Association. There's an actual group that regulates Nen and makes world decisions about it, the place that actually hires those professional hunters. So even though it's kept a secret still, Nen obviously does play a huge role in society. And Nen doesn't stop existing with people. Nen can still be present when someone dies. Nen tangibly affects the world around it. And with the world building, that kind of leads into my fourth section. what other series can learn from Nen. So I've already brought up a few other series in this video so far, and I could choose a bunch of different series, but I think you guys know which one I'm going to choose. Given it's what my main channel is focused on, let's talk about Dragon Ball. Another huge series with a big power system that a lot of people love to talk about. One of the most prominent as well, and one of the longest running. And I don't want you guys taking this as me disparaging Dragon Ball in any way, or any other series for that matter. Instead, it's me just praising Hunter x Hunter, and kind of outline some aspects from this series that other series could use to actually make their systems work better. As I've covered with Nen, it feels unique, there's different ways to use it, and it's not just one stagnant thing. With Dragon Ball, there are different aspects of key usage and powers that are being introduced nowadays, but it's a little far and few in between. But it's pretty common for someone to just be threatening because they're just physically strong, which isn't necessarily a problem, but with a universe as big as Dragon Ball's, actually a multiverse, you would think there'd be a little bit more variety in how ki is used. Or besides that, not even just ki, they have other power systems in there, like magic for example, which is barely touched upon, but could make for an interesting piece of the story to actually delve into a little bit more. They kind of did it with Moro, but they also kind of just throw that to the side. Nen is constantly building upon itself, showing new ways of Nen usage, and characters do grow in physical strength, and new antagonists have physical strength to back themselves up. But the big difference that I like is the fact that it doesn't just rely on that. And even when there's a series with people that have different powers that are unique to them, sometimes those powers just feel stagnant, only having some minute gains. Nen users constantly improve upon themselves and show different ways how to use their powers. And back to Dragon Ball for a bit, it feels like sometimes it does try to introduce different types of powers. We get the power that the gods have. We briefly delved into magic. There's also spirit, which isn't really touched upon too much. But back to those god powers, that's really the only thing that gets explored in depth, and even then, there's nothing about it that's too unique from ki usage. Or in the case of Ultra Instinct, pre-existing martial arts ideas. And now back to the idea of how Nen plays a role in the world around it. Other series do this well, of course, My Hero Academia being a really good example of that. Another example I like to bring up because there are some similarities there, and since quirks are so intertwined with everything. But again, series like Dragon Ball, it's not like ki needs to be known to everybody. Martial arts itself plays a big role in the Dragon Ball world. I mean, there's big tournaments hosted for that. But outside of brief usages like Spirit, for example, and how it can derive power from anyone and anything, ki doesn't feel too ingrained in the world. Magic kind of is in a way with how obviously important the Dragon Balls are, but things could be delved into more. And it's not just Dragon Ball. I think Dragon Ball's just the best example of this. Areas where it could actually learn from Hunter x Hunter, improve itself. And nothing incredibly complex is needed either. Something simple could work just as well. Having a power system that's unique, constantly growing, and something that affects the world and characters around it in more ways than just physical strength, it really can add a lot to a series. And hopefully in the future, we can see more like this. I obviously really like Nen, and I'd love to see more people take inspiration from it. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.